once again, ladies and gentlemen, United Flight 2739 is departing to Dallas as fast.
We're beginning a journey. We're beginning our journey into the waiting room. And this journey is in and on prayer. And that's going to be the next 6 to 7 weeks that we're doing. This is a discipleship journey that we are doing as well. So some of you have joined in with us. If you're wondering what that is, ask somebody that has one of these books in their hand, and they can start to describe it to you and help you understand what it is that we're doing. And you can maybe join in on the next one. But what I want you to do is, as we're starting into this journey, there's a reason we don't call it a series. There's a reason we don't, say this one message or anything like that. We call it a journey because that's exactly what it's intended to be. It's intended to be something that you're completely wrapped up in your mind and your heart and your body, and everything about it is carrying you through an idea. But who's ever been on a vacation before? Okay, cool. And who's been to the same place on vacation before? Yeah, because you found that place that you really enjoyed and you just keep going back. For our family, it was chosen for us to be Belize. It's not particularly where we maybe would have chose to always go, but that's where we tend to go. And it's a journey there, but we do it repeatedly. And that's why we call these journeys, is because they're intended to take us through a thought, an idea, and as we're carried through that, we can revisit that at any time, whenever we need to. I'm going to have to adjust this one more time, guys. That's a little bit better, because from up here, it sounds like I'm... So, as we're doing this journey, what I want you to think about is, am I revisiting this throughout my week? Now, when I say revisiting this, I don't specifically mean, like, did you watch the session online again? Although, go for it. Feel free to. I don't specifically mean, like, did I revisit it by just simply thinking, about it? But did I revisit it in my heart and my mind? Maybe that is through watching it. But moreover, did I revisit it in Scripture, or did I revisit it in practice? In the practice of what it is we're talking about. Because every single one of you here this morning are compelled by something to be here. Something compelled you to drag your butt out of bed, to get up, to come here, and to sit down in these chairs. Something compelled you to. Some of you, it could be just simple tradition, who was like raised in church, and that's just what you do on Sunday. Some of you, it's tradition that compels you to be here. Some of you, maybe it was a friend or a family member that just would not quit bugging you and keep sending you the GPS coordinates of the church just in case you got lost on the way. I've done that to people. Some of you, it's because someone compelled you to be here. Some of you, it's because you're compelled just by view of God and who He is, and you're like, I want to get together with other people who view it this way. And some of you are compelled by simply the nature of, I've tried everything else in life, and it just doesn't seem to work out, so why not give this a shot? But we're compelled by something that brings you here. And as we're being compelled by whatever that is, I hope over this journey, over the next 7 weeks, I'm going to give you a money-back guarantee, unlike Daniel, that if you dedicate and do this journey with us, whether you're in discipleship or not, even if you're just like, cool, I didn't join in this time. Matter of fact, I don't even know what you're really talking about. That's cool. But you're just going to join in on this journey on Sundays with us. Commit to it for the entirety of this. And then I give you a money-back guarantee. It's just free, by the way. So, a money-back guarantee that if you actually listen and do this, not like your life will be the best life you've ever had. The best life you've ever had starts now and never ends if you join in on it with us. but that your life will be completely and utterly altered and shifted and changed. And that is not Jared promising you that. That is the being that invented the idea of existence that promises that. But it requires a listen and doing. There's a word for this the ancient Hebrews used, and it's called Shema. This word Shema, for us, we don't have a word that means it. Because we have, who's ever heard, hey, I know you're hearing me, but you're not listening to me. Who's ever said that to children? Yeah? You're hearing me, but who said that to employees? Or how about this, wives? Who've said that to your husbands? Can I get an amen? So with this, I need you to Shema. And what that means is, for the Hebrew people, there was no distinction between hearing something and doing it. Like it was, if you said, I Shema, or I heard you, that means not only did I hear you, I'm doing what you said to do. We've separated it, right? We can hear instructions, and what do? We don't do it. So this is where you get later on in Scripture. There's a dude named Jesus, and what he says is, hey, they have ears, but they don't hear. What is he saying? They're not Shema. They're not hearing it and executing, doing it, because the two are the same. To say that you've heard my word is to say that you're doing whatever it is, right? So I promise you, if you Shema, if you hear and do, there's going to be a shift. And the shift, ironically enough, is not a shift in your life outward, but it's a shift in your life inward that then grows something brand new outward. Now, I don't know about you guys. I'm not a planter. I do not grow things. I do not have a green thumb by any means, but I do know this. Everything that you plant takes a little bit of time for you to see the end result of it. We have had some trees in our backyard that are supposed to be fruit trees. We have yet to see that happen. I have been told it could take years before it ever produces any fruit. Now, we didn't even plant the seed. We just bought the tree. We cheated. We tried to come up here and bribe, and we just got a tree planted. It's like, now we only have to wait like 3 or 4 years, which still kind of sucks. But this is like a seed in you that will grow if you Shema, hear and do, in this journey with us, that will begin to grow. And you may not see immediate response in your heart, mind, life, but as you continue to water it and continue to keep it, it will begin to grow something. And by the end of this 7 weeks, you may just see a little bit of a sprig pop up. The beginning of like something like a grand oak tree. And so as we are compelled here, I ask that you take that compelling nature, raise it up a level. You know, Mario, get your mushroom, level up. And then stay with us in this journey, in and on prayer. Now, prayer is, by definition, the most misunderstood and misused thing you have ever heard. I would venture to say this, that every single one of you, when I say the word prayer, you define it categorically wrong. And so if we don't even know what it is, the odds are we don't even know how to do it or anything about that. Now, I hear somebody right now saying, he's saying that you can pray wrong. By your definition of prayer, no, you cannot. By the truest definition of prayer, you absolutely can. Now, if you say wrong, did you notice in this skit, that's what you think wrong is. You didn't close your eyes. Resubmit the form. Who's been told, close your eyes when you pray? I thought Gabby was going to say one line she had, but I was driving. Like, yeah, don't close your eyes while you're driving if you're praying, right? And then you had Jade come up here, and what did he do? He bowed. You got to kneel. If you're not kneeling, then your prayer won't be answered. Who's been told something of these natures to some degree, yeah? Or how about you didn't give enough? You're not tithing. That's why your prayers aren't being answered. I've actually heard that before. And as Jacob said, it can't be this bloody hard. That's the best I can do at an English accent. It can't be that difficult. And the actual truth is it's not. But when we define prayer, every single one of you defined it something in this realm right here. Prayer. And you went to asking God for things. Raise your hand if that is the primary definition that went through your head. Liar, 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 liar. You want to know how I know? Because the number one question that people ask about prayer is, why don't my prayers get answered? And that question of why doesn't it get answered means you ask something, which means your entire definition of prayer is asking God for things. So let me ask again, whose primary definition is, I asked God for things? Okay, liars again. We'll do it again. Let me show you one other reason why. You say, no, it's talking to God. What do you talk to him about? How you want life to change. So you're asking him for something. C.S. Lewis said something quite brilliantly about prayer when he said, we say, well, asking God for things is the lowest form of prayer. There's higher forms of prayer. And he says, no doubt that may be true. But he said, to think that you could be in perfect symbiotic relationship with God in which you don't wish anything to be different in life must be a high state of affairs, but that ain't where we are. What he's meaning is that you're just perfectly content with everything where life is, so thus you don't require or ask God to change anything. But yet, that is the primary thing when we go talk to God. I would venture to say that's actually probably 90% the only thing we talk to God about, isn't it? Case in point again, because y'all still haven't quite agreed with me. This is not in my notes, so this is gonna elongate until I get everybody on the same page. It's cool. I know some of y'all were out in the sun, burning your buns a little bit yesterday or what have you. So we'll give you a minute to ramp it up a little bit. Some of you lost in volleyball really hard. It's fine. 17 points right here, just all day. But home court advantage. But what we do constantly, and here's exactly how. What do we do when something goes wrong? Caleb said this, and I'm going to look at, usually the old joke is you turn around so you can't see my face. I'm going to look you square in the eye. Caleb asked me this question. I was like, yeah, it's a good point. And I'm just trying to tick you off till you listen. He said, Jared, and he holds up, he says, I know you're not on Facebook. But posting for a prayer request, can that be anything other than trying to garner other people's attention? And I was like, I don't think so, Caleb. Why? Now, I don't know about you guys, but my children, if they want something from me, Levi knows good and well to not go to Ann to ask for Ann to come to me, because I'm going to tell Ann, you get your butt and tell your brother if he wants something, come talk to me himself. Oh, did I just smush somebody? I did. I told you I was here to challenge you because y'all chose this path. There was a nicer path that was written right here, but you chose to lie and tell me that your primary way of communicating to God is not begging his power to come and sprinkle it on you and make your life better than it is because you want it to be different, because you want help, because you want this. You never want anybody to die, but yet his appointed unto man wants to die. All we do is treat God like a cosmic butler in the sky that says, I'm sitting at my table and waiting on some service. Can I get a glass of water, please? I'm parched. God, why is it taking so long? God just must not answer. This is poor service. Some of you are like, yeah, this is a poor service. I'm leaving right now. Man, we ain't even 10 minutes in. I've been called a liar. Now put it on for size. You holier than thou suckers. That is exactly, when I said prayer, that is exactly where you went to. And the number one question you get from people is, why doesn't God answer prayers? And then the second thing that you get when you think about prayer is, why even do it? Because God's in complete control. So what are you actually praying for? Does that seem conflicting? On one hand, all of you people as believers, raise your hand if you're somewhat of a believer. I said just somewhat, like, yeah, it's possibly true. Okay, so it's possibly true, and the number one thing we say is God's in control, but then we turn around and ask him to fix things that, by your own definition, he made happen. You've got a problem. I don't, because I don't believe like you guys believe. So I ask again, when I said prayer, how many of us actually went to, I'm just asking God to do something in my life that I want to be different. I'm not really even concerned if he thinks it should be different. This is just what I want. And then I get upset when the service is poor. That's what you think prayer is, which is why you don't do it as often as you should. Because you don't know what it is, and you think it's just asking God for things, which is why the only time people tend to really pray, in their definition of prayer, is what? I'm just going to say it because I'm just going to keep ticking people off until I get something out of you dead folks. Until shit hits the fan, you don't pray. Oh, you marginally do. You listen to a worship song and say, woo, that made me feel good. Does anyone have that family member that you only see when they need something? Mickey raised his hand real high. Oh, wait, he's just that tall. Never mind. No, we've all got that person or that family member that they don't show up anywhere until what? There's crap flying everywhere. Then all of a sudden, what? They're around the family, specifically around the family who tends to have whatever they need, which is 9 times out of 10, money. I've got plenty of gold bricks somewhere. They're just paperweights, guys. If we had that kind of gold bullion, I would be in Belize. No, what? Till they need what it is that they have. Yeah? The church is the epitome of that. People are told, your life's going bad. What do you need to do? You need to get to church. And what does the church tell you? You need to get to praying. What do you need to do? You need to be getting God to ask God for things. That's what you need to do. God is a cosmic vending machine, and he doesn't even take Apple Pay. In y'all's view. Because prayer to you is just simply, I am going to request of God something. Oh, but I'm holier than that. I don't ask for what I need. I ask for his will to be done. That's how Jesus prayed, so I got it. But like that family member or friend that only shows up when they need something, our relationship and conversation with God is really not much different. Now, I'm going to use marriage this morning as an example. If that does not strike a chord with you, I'm going to tell you 2 reasons why. Number 1, because you haven't experienced it, or number 2, the experience you've had with it is poor. And I'm here to tell you that I'm using marriage because it is the pinnacle of a relationship that God set up. Marriage is not a manly institution. It is a spiritual institution that God created. And he basically said, if you do a relationship in these parameters that I gave you, you'll understand who I am. That's what he said. So I'm going to use that as an example a couple of times today. And I hope that you can open your heart and mind to hear how it looks. So you can replace, if I say my wife, you can replace it with husband. You can replace it with best friend. You can replace it with whatever the deepest relationship, my mom, my dad, my brother, my sister, the deepest relationship that you've ever known, replace it. Because when I say wife, that's what I mean. The deepest relationship I've ever had in this life. So you can replace it with whatever you need to, but you need to think about the deepest relationship you've ever had. So for instance, in the deepest relationship you've ever had, and my wife, it would be an absolute ludicrous idea for me to say, honey, actually, I probably wouldn't even call her honey if this is how our relationship worked. I would say, Taryn, I need you to cook me a steak tonight. Thank you, bye-bye. I show up, actually, she's not a good steak cooker, but she's great seasoning. I show up, and the steak's not cooked, and I'm like, Taryn, will you please make me a steak? I don't understand why you didn't make me a steak in the first place. You know I like steak, and I just want a steak. You know I like snack packs. Why can't you just give me a snack pack? You don't need no snack pack. That's Billy Madison. And then I say, thank you. And she doesn't. And I go say, Jade, come ask your mom with me to make me a steak. So then I get Jade and I say, Jade, say it with me. Taryn, will you make, and Jade starts to say, Taryn, will you make Dad a steak, please, so he will shut up? That's why some of y'all agree to pray with people. Just shut them up, God. But what is this whole paradigm? Prayer is still asking God for something, yes? I'm not leaving this point alone until you just know, like, that is not the precipice of prayer. That's really that's barely in there. And then it doesn't work with me and Jade, so what do? More people. And You come with me and Jade. Taryn, will you make me a steak? And Ann says, Mom, please make Dad a steak. He really needs a steak. I just want him to know that you love him. Please make him a steak. And Jade says, Taryn, make Dad a steak so he'll hush. And that doesn't work. So Jade goes to 4 other people. And he goes down the hall to Mimi. He says, Mimi, we need this to happen. Because I don't know if you know this or not, but Dad really wants a steak. And Dad, It's called gossip, by the way. And then we get more people together. Because we have this weird idea that if we get a whole bunch of people together, then it turns up the volume, and now God will hear us more. And if we get the right people, oh man, you get that pastor, not this one, he cusses, that's a bad deal. No one listens to this guy. But let's go get a real pastor. I was recently called a lollipop Christian, so let's not have a lollipop Christian. We can't get that preacher. We got to get a real one because that one is holy. I don't care about what happened 3 years ago. That was just on Facebook. It wasn't, it didn't make, what is the Christian television network? I don't even know what it's called. TBN, right? Is in that one? Okay, I don't know. And so we think if we get someone that's somehow higher up the ladder, they'll listen more. So I call Teresa, which is Taryn's mom. I say, will you tell this girl that you raised to make me a steak? Because I think she's got a little more sway than I do. Now, I painted you a picture that all of you were bored with after about the 3rd time, but that is how we treat prayer. I told you I was coming for it. That's what we think. Now, I hear some of you going, is he saying we shouldn't pray together and ask for prayer? Shut up. You got 7 weeks before I answer that question. That's not coming till the end. And I'm going to keep badgering you until we wipe it away. Whether you are on the fence about believing in God at all this morning, you're sitting here and you're like, I was compelled because someone brought me here. And you say, I don't even know if I believe in all this. That's cool. But you have the same thought because all of the rest of people who are saying that they're fully dedicated and in relationship with God are telling you that's how it works. And you've got a problem. Your problem is the whole of Scripture that tells you precisely the opposite. See, what would make more sense in my steak idea is if just simply I went to Taryn and said, hey, honey, oh, how could I call her that? Well, because I know her. I know her quite well. Could you make me a steak? But you know the interesting thing? There's even another level in that because y'all can't even see. Most of y'all are like, yeah, see, ask God for things. You're still wrong. See, because I'm using steak because, see, the other night, God, I am going to get in so much trouble. Where is this coming from? This was not what I studied. This is y'all's fault. See, because the other night, I was up here working, and I had to work pretty late because of the academy and stuff, so I have to do, like, evening times to get some of the work done in here. And so I'm supposed to cook steaks. And so I'm running late to get there. And before I even got home, I knew I was supposed to be cooking the steaks, but see, she called to me because of a relationship. She called to me and said, what do you need me to help you with towards this goal that we have been given, which is have some steaks. Replace steaks with your path of life, replace Taryn with God, and replace me with your dumb butt. And she called out to me and said, hey, I know you wanted to do steaks, because it was actually my idea. There is nothing better than a home-cooked steak with the nectar of the gods. Matter of fact, I ate 3 steaks. 3 big old 10-ounce steaks. I know, I'm not even ashamed. I didn't eat mashed potatoes, so low carbs, it's keto. But see, she called me. What can I do? And she's cutting the steaks. She's seasoning the steaks. And when I get home, the nectar of the gods is waiting on the counter, and the steaks are ready, and all I had to do is go, psh, psh, psh. And they're the best steaks I've ever had, so from now on, she's seasoning them. But do you see the relationship that happened here? I didn't even have to ask for things because of the relationship that is there. It was already known, and I didn't feel the need to ask for anything. Now you're starting to see what true prayer is intended to be, which is why when you get Jesus in the Lord's Prayer, you get him giving us a simple template that we're going to dive into over the next 7 weeks. That is just simply saying, kingdom come, will be done. Give us this day our daily bread. You notice in that, y'all know it? Let's say it together. If you know it with me, say it together. If you don't, just say watermelon, watermelon. It's cool. Most people only know the beginning anyways. Here's what it says. It says, our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread. See, this is... We sound like that video just a while ago. Lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. And then there's a little piece there that says, for thine is the glory and power in the kingdom forever, amen. Depending on your translation, it may or may not even be in there, that last little part. All of that, and how much of it was asking for anything? One sentence asking for something. And what was it? Daily bread. He didn't ask for steaks, guys. Bread. The lowest form of sustaining nutrition in the ancient world was what Jesus said ask for. Ouch. He said, here's how it works. Pause. No, I'm just going for it. I'm at the end, and then we're going to go back. See, because here's how it works. Jesus says, our Father who art in heaven, identifying a relationship with God. Hallowed be your name, who God is. Your kingdom come, your will be done. You could say, well, that's asking God for something. Yeah, for him, for God. Y'all didn't catch it. Y'all remember the puzzle of paradise? Who was here for the puzzle of paradise? Okay, if you weren't, go back and watch it. Go to the YouTube channel, watch Puzzle of Paradise. Because see, when we say kingdom come, we're not actually asking for a place to come here or for us to go there. All we're simply asking for is God to be here. I don't know about you guys, but in my relationship, if I said, honey, I don't really care if you're there, but just make sure the steaks are on the counter, you can go. Everybody's like, this sounds like a recipe for a bad, and some of you are like, oh, this is why my marriage isn't working. No, why? Because the greatest desire should actually be to be together, and whatever may come from that may come. So he's defining the whole thing in a different realm. Thy kingdom come, your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Then what does he say? Give us this day our daily bread. He didn't even ask for a savings account. He just said, today, the very basis of what I need to survive. That's all I need. Why? Because everything else in me is fulfilled in you. Has anyone ever hit a brick wall in your life where you're like, it didn't hit the fan, it blew off the roof, life is over? Has anyone ever had that situation where it's like, and someone turns to you, typically pretty close in your family, and says, if we have nothing else, we have each other? Has anyone ever heard a statement like that? And then you're like, liar, because now you're gone, right? Okay. Oh, that hit a little bit too hard. What is that saying? It's saying all we need is each other because that sustains us and whatever else may come can come. And Jesus is painting that picture. He's saying all of that is the important thing. All I need to do is just stay alive. He didn't ask for the sun, moon, and stars. He just said, I just want you and I just want to be sustained. And then what does he say? Right there with sustaining me so I'm just alive, forgiveness. And then he moves on, which I'm not going to break down the whole thing. Now, what some of you don't know is why that is such a radical thing. And that's what I want to break apart with you just real quick. Why? Because if you remember, what happened was the disciples were walking with Jesus. And they said, hey, Jesus, Master, Rabbi, depending on your translation, it'll say one of those. Teach us to pray like you do. And the reason that was such a huge thing and scandalous is because of the way that Jesus prayed. See, because What Jesus did was something really interesting. What Jesus did was took an already known prayer and made it personal. Most of you don't know this, but that was not an original prayer that Jesus prayed. It was actually a redone version of a prayer that the Jewish people had been praying for centuries. And he took it and he prayed it differently. In all accounts, basically telling them, pray more intimately than you think you're even allowed to. Be closer to God than you think you're even allowed to be. See, because the other prayer starts off with, blessed are you, our God, creator of the universe. And is it an honorable thing to understand and know God in that way? Yes, but Jesus says, no, make it personal. Pray, our Father. Be more intimate than you think you're allowed to be. But see, we have a problem. And it's prayer. Our problem is our view of prayer and our view of life. Now, I'm going to move pretty quickly through the rest of what I have to say after this one thing. I want to tell you a story. And in this story, I think we can see ourselves in it. So if you got to close your eyes to imagine the story, please do. There's a woman, and she's hop, skipping, and jumping along in her day because her kids are off to school. Husband's out of the house. And she's taking a stroll, maybe down the street to go see him. It's a beautiful day. Husband's at work. Kids are gone. And in the middle of an intimate moment where passion is flowing from her, the same passion that used to be there with her husband, but it's not there anymore. So she just found something different. In that moment, she's jerked up by the nape of her neck by a priest and drug out into the streets to put on display for everyone. Can't you imagine being in that moment? What was she thinking? No one's ever thought about that. Some of you already caught the story. Some of you are like, this is a weird story, Jared, to be telling on a Sunday. The Bible is crazy. Read it. And the priest drags her out, catching her in the middle of an act, and uses her as a prop to try to catch Jesus. Some of you, that's exactly what the church does. We try to use people for props. And pulls her out in the middle of it and throws her down. Can you imagine what she knows the law. She's like, this is over. The moment that started in complete ecstasy because she was getting to do whatever she wanted, however she wanted, now all of a sudden she has to start recounting and thinking about, are they going to go get my kids and are they going to see me in this state? What about my husband? They're going to kill me now. They're going to start. She knew all of this. She knew what was coming. And the priest pulls her out, throws her in the street, trying to catch Jesus and says, hey, you know the law too, Jesus. What do you say about this? You know the law of Moses, the one that says, if you catch a woman committing adultery, stone her, which is literally, hey, everybody, let's go outside, get some rocks, and throw them at her until she's dead. Cool? Let's do it. Can you imagine being her on the ground with a bunch of priests around? Priests, not like what you think of a priest, like the highest person in the land, aside from the Roman military, and they're saying to this guy, Jesus, they're saying, what do you say? You know the law, so what do you say about this? The interesting thing is Jesus doesn't even respond immediately. Jesus is the GOAT. He is the greatest of all time. He doesn't even respond. It says he bends down and starts writing in the dirt. I heard a guy say this, and I always thought it was funny. He was writing the names of all their girlfriends in the dirt. We don't know what it just says he bent down and started drawing in the dirt. And after some time passed, he just let the moment settle. And after some time passed, he stood up and he says something to the effect of, all right, that is the law. But whoever hasn't sinned, you throw the first stone. Can't you imagine being on the ground there for a moment? That would be a radical thing. Wait, because everybody sinned. Like, she knew the scriptures just like most of you. well, everybody's sinned and fallen short of the glory of God. Like, she may not have said that scripture, but other scriptures, like we're all guilty. So what's going to happen, right? Could you imagine the tension of that? It's like now there's a little bit of hope, and hers. I'm sure the first one she flinched. I know I would if I'm thinking like I'm about to be pummeled by rocks, and I hear it. I'd be like, I'd jump at wasp. Ryan's got me beat, but I jump at wasp. You know when she heard that. And then they're all gone. It says she looks up, and all she sees is Jesus standing there. And he's standing there, and he just says, woman, where are those that accuse you? Where'd they go? And she looks around, she's like, they're gone. See, y'all read it. If you've ever read that story, you read it, and she says, there are none, Lord. No, she'd be like, holy crap! That would be an emotional roller coaster if there ever was one. You just went from sliding through with all of the things you want to do to caught in the act, drug out and humiliated, wondering what's going to happen, your whole life's falling apart, thinking you're about to die, clown. That was Happy Gilmore. And saying, this is the end. And then hearing someone say, yeah, but all of you, if you're without sin, throw the first one. And they all leave. And now she's like, wait, it's not over. This is the greatest day. And Jesus says, well, if they don't condemn you, neither do I. Go. Sin no more. What does that mean? Go and don't do that anymore. You see where this got you? Don't do it anymore. Now you may be asking yourself, what does that have anything to do with prayer? You're about to see something. Because see, that was the moment of greatest humiliation in her entire life, and it became the moment that now, because of that complete and utter experience of the grace of God through Christ, that's now the thing she's going to talk about for the rest of her life. The very thing that was intended and that was going to destroy her is the very thing that now becomes the catalyst that compels her for the rest of her life. Have you ever thought about that? See, that's the kind of like when God writes stories, that's how he does it. God's not an editor. He repurposes. He uses every single thing in human history and says, I can work with that. I can work with that. He doesn't edit and try to delete. This is for somebody. Like the church tries to do. Let's wipe that clean, keep that to the side. We don't want to talk about that. We don't want to know about that. God says, I want to use that. I'm not going to edit. I'm going to repurpose and use. And the point of your greatest demise is actually the point of your greatest rise out of this. And it's the thing that compels her forward for the rest of her life. Now, I have no clue what those conversations looked like for her. Little did she know that the real battle of her life probably just began. See, well, you never thought past the story, have you? I want to give you a little hint real quick. That's in John chapter 7. John is a literary ninja. He wrote that story without the rest of the story, so you could start thinking about that's where I was, and this is where I am, and the real fight begins. Because don't you know, people talk. They were in the marketplace in a small town. Everybody saw this happen. What was the rest of that day like? The joy that was in her now can be squelched by the just unblushing, boom, I've got some stuff to deal with. I got to now talk to my husband and explain to him what was happening. I've got to talk to my kids and look them square in the face. The real fight began. And it even goes further. Because there's something that happens after that. See, depending on where your focus is in the story will depend on how hard you think that first battle is. Because see, if your focus is on you and your guilt and shame in the matter, You may try to cover up and hide it too. But if your eyes is on the love and unblushing promises of God, you have no problem with sharing what just happened because, yeah, I know, don't keep your eyes focused on what I just said happened to me, but look at what he did. And that was the first battle. The biggest one, though, is all the years after. All the years after for this woman that had that experience that what could now sustain her. She's going to have to deal maybe with some natural repercussions, but she's saying, no, if you just get that view, can you believe what Jesus did? That he didn't say stone me, even though he knows the law, and that was the law. He said, no, we're going to supersede it with grace and mercy, even though she knew all of that, and she's willing to combat all of the things, but there's something that happens, and it's something that we're far too really shy to say. And I'm just going to say it as bluntly as I can. Fidelity is boring. It's boring. One of the greatest love stories that has been told of our day and age has been made into a movie, and it's called The Notebook. Who's ever watched it? Come on, there's an ending scene that everybody gets a little misty. Except for the death goddess, apparently. The Notebook, if you've ever seen it, it's like 20 years old, guys, so okay? The Notebook starts with young, passionate love and zeal. You got, who's the dude? Ryan Gosling and I don't know the other chick's name or whatever, right? And it's painting this picture of young love. Who knows what I'm talking about? And like he's coming, I think he worked in a mine or something, I don't remember. He's like coming out and he's all dirty and she's like, She's messing with my phone, guys. And she just jumps on him. I think she's even wearing like a little white sundress thing, right? Doesn't even care. It's just like, woo. Has anybody ever been in love like that before where you just don't care? You're just infatuated with the other person, right? And it shows all these scenes of that and even some of the young passionate fights and stuff like that. But what do? They kiss in the rain. I've tried to stand out in the rain and get my wife to kiss me. It is not romantic, guys. No one wants to do it. And then what does it do? It fast forwards 50 years and they're laying in a bed about to die together. And it's like, oh, it's so beautiful. But guess what the boringest movie of all time would be? Let's talk about the 50 years in between that young, passionate love and then that ending love that seems so effortless and easy. Let's talk about what happened in the middle. No one would want to watch that. It would not be a New York Times bestseller. Because fidelity is boring to the natural senses. But yet we know what we actually want is that ending scene experience. We want the effortlessness of a love and a passion that goes deeper than the initial expression. But in between was, if you were to peek under the hood of that make-believe relationship, there was something that was driving it forward and keeping it working and keeping it moving. There was a rhythm to life that sustained this initial passion that albeit ebb and flows, but it created this thing that we all want and yet nothing else can satisfy. But it was the middle and it was fidelity. It was a rhythm of life. It was a commitment. In your spiritual walk, that is prayer. Prayer is fidelity. Prayer is meant to be a rhythm of life. Dietrich Bonhoeffer was once doing a wedding. If you don't know who he is, he's a quite prolific minister a while ago. And he was doing a wedding. I want you to imagine this. I'm using this if anyone else planning on getting married and you ask me to do it, I'm going to use this quote. And he says, "Today you are young and quite much in love. And you think that your love can sustain your marriage. It cannot. Let your marriage sustain your love." Think about that for a minute. You think that your current passion and your current exhilaration can sustain you through the years. But the truth is what? It won't and it can't. Anybody who's been married 5 years or more knows, because there's something that goes awry in people's brains after a few years. What? It becomes boring. I'll give you a hint. The reason it becomes boring is because you stopped doing the thing that sustains it. And you thought your love could sustain you through it, but it couldn't. All the while really wanting the end scene, wanting that end result of such a deep and effortless love and compassion and devotion towards each other. That's what I want, but there's this huge gap of fidelity in between that just seems to be dredging our feet. We start off like the woman, caught in the act, guilty, red-handed, every single one of us in some degree or another. You may say, Jared, are you talking about marriage and adultery? Or you're talking about my life? I'm talking about both. If the shoe fits, wear it. But most of us, at any given moment in time, if we looked in our lives and you had any ounce of humility, you would know, yeah, I've been in that spot. I have completely and utterly failed God and failed in all of this. But the beauty, some of us have had that experience, that expression where the grace of God just hit us square in the face, and it was the most glorious thing we've ever experienced. And we start off chipper down the road following Jesus, and then we end up in just a year or less dragging our feet along the path, just dredging through it because it's boring. I just don't want to do it anymore. And we find a new love. And prayer is meant to be fidelity. And so like that woman, the real battle of our lives had begun at the moment of that experience. Some of you, maybe it was even last week. Some of you, maybe it's right now in this moment. It's becoming real to you. Some of you may be asleep right now, and it was 30 years ago, and you're in that middle thing and saying, I want to be in that scene with God because I know nothing else in this world is going to make it make sense. The thing I want, I know is not in existence, so you're just dragging your feet along with it. And it's the fidelity in the middle. And you thought that that experience, that expression could sustain you in this, and it could not. I told you I was using marriage so you can replace it with anything you want, okay? There is a reason that infidelity runs rampant in our world today. I'm not preaching against this, guys. I'm trying to get you to see God. Why? You're chasing an experience. The church is bought hook, line, and sinker into that. If you don't know what the church is, that's supposed to be a group of people that are devoted to fidelity in Christ, and we're the people that are dragging along. And all the while, trying to look for the next little, that first kiss moment, we want to find it again. There's even songs written about it, and they're called worship songs, and I'm not preaching against them, that says, I used to actually think I liked the song until I thought about it for just a second. Take me back. I want to go back to how it was at the beginning. I'll tell you something. I don't want to go back to the beginning of arguing with my wife the way we used to argue. We used to argue about the stupidest crap ever. I like where my relationship is now. I don't want to go back because it's better than it was. So if you're saying I want to go back to how my relationship with God was at the beginning, you have lost fidelity in the middle. Because a real relationship that grows says, I don't want to go back that way. There's far greater things ahead, which is the promise of the Spirit of God. And prayer is that fidelity. You can't define it as that asking God for things, cosmic butler, vending machine in the sky. It is meant to be an intimate conversation, really intercourse that we have. Sex, if you want to call it that, is just such a little, just an ounce of the intimacy that he wants to have within your heart, within your spirit. He says that's what prayer is. It's that level. But it happens in the middle, in the fidelity. And just like Dietrich Bonhoeffer said, you think your love can sustain your marriage? No, let your marriage sustain your love. Let it be like a container that you pour into. Just like your life. See, here's a container. My wife asked if I was pouring something on people today. I am not. This is a container. It is empty. So it's like your life. Many of you think your love, care, and passion, whether it be in a marriage, whether it be in whatever it is, whether it be in a friendship with God, your relationship with God can be sustained by moments of singing songs or by moments of seeing a miracle happen or by moments of whatever these things. Those are just moments. Are they great? Yes. But are they sustaining? No. They cannot sustain. You need a vessel. You need something to pour that into. This needs to be like your life, and this is your fidelity, your love, care, and devotion. And it needs something to contain it. Otherwise, it goes everywhere. And it just splatters all over the place. It's chaos. It never amounts to anything. It's dry. You can't even slurp it up with a Slurpee straw if you wanted to. It's consumed because there was nothing to contain it in. And God says this is your life, and you need to pour yourself constantly, every day, like a steady stream, just pouring yourself into a container that can hold and can conceal what it is there, like fidelity that keeps filling up slowly and slowly till it becomes something that is useful, till it becomes something that is fulfilling, till it becomes something that is desirable. He says, this is what your life needs to be, a container. And your life is something that prayer, conversation with God is to be poured into. And your life contains the fidelity in the prayer. In Psalms 55, it says day and night and day, morning, noon, and night. I cry out and God hears me. Yes, is there a petitioning and asking God in prayer? Absolutely. But when there is deep, meaningful relationship, when there is fidelity, the asking is already known in there. And all I'm doing is actually talking about it. There's an interesting thing that happens when a relationship of fidelity is there. The openness to share every nook and cranny of who you are becomes effortless. And the interesting thing is, again, I'm using my wife. If you have a best friend because you're not married or something like that, or if you're saying, man, that is not how my relationship is, put God at the center of it. Let it become a container and pour fidelity into it with prayer as the primary facet of your life. And watch what grows and flourishes from that. Because see what happens now, when I sit down with my wife, just the other morning we were having a cup of coffee. We weren't talking about anything particularly deep, to some maybe. But all I was doing was sharing just currently where I'm at. What's going on? I wasn't particularly asking for her help. I was just exposing and sharing. But yet in that, help came. Help came in the facet of, I knew I had someone with reckless fidelity to me as well that was bonded together, so I felt completely at ease to share my vulnerabilities, and in that became strong. If you don't know, there's scripture that says that, in your weakness, he is strong. In that fidelity between each other, as we're talking about this, advice could be given, and it can be given in such a way that it meets me right where I'm at. Now that's in a human relationship, and we're talking about a mind that invented the idea of relationships. What more? But it's the fidelity in the middle. The question becomes this. If this is a view of prayer, a relational view, where have we got off the mark so much? I mean, every one of you have heard this statement. Prayer is a conversation with God. Who's heard that statement? And if you're honest, says, it doesn't feel like a conversation. It feels like I'm waiting on hold, listening to hold music, wanting to have one. Where did we get so far off the mark? How does it seem like we're so distant from what we find in Scripture, from the life that Jesus had? When you look at the life of Christ and you read his story, every time you turn around, the dude's praying. He either loved to wait on hold or there was something different happening in that fidelity in the middle with him. That's the journey we're about to be on. So whether you find yourself currently like the woman in the sense of shame and haven't quite felt the liberation of the grace and mercy of God, I promise you it's coming. All you need to do is look up. If you find yourself seeming like it's newly refreshed in me and I'm headed down the path, but I feel the pressure of those first battles, it is time to enact fidelity. Start with fidelity. Don't be like the rest of us that have gone up and down in this thing. Start with the fidelity of prayer. If you find yourself saying, I'm done past that. Matter of fact, I have found myself caught in the act so many times you don't even want to talk. Y'all are like the woman at the well who just says, yeah, you got 5 dudes and ain't none of them your husband. Whether you find yourself way down the line, dragging your feet along and saying, it's tradition. I'm just coming and doing this. I know I'm supposed to, but I don't feel or sense or believe even that there's even a possibility anymore that I could be like that ending scene in The Notebook, that there could be that level of effortless fidelity and love. Or even if you find yourself at the very end of that story saying, I'm there, I promise you. In relationships, there's no goal. There's no achievement markers. The goal is to know each other. And anybody who's been with someone any length of time or even had a friend for any length of time, you know there's no end to knowing a fellow human being, much less no end to knowing the mind that created all things. So no matter where you find yourself in that story, fidelity of prayer, something that you can pour into. Let my life is now going to contain my fidelity. My experience with Christ was that, an experience, and it was amazing, and it will lift you out. But the crazy thing is when I begin to work within this line of prayer as fidelity, those experiences not only become more frequent, they become more powerful, more moving. Now, they can quickly become commonplace, but not with prayer as your fidelity in this. Reckless, persistent, devoted. Psalms 1 shares with us exactly kind of the beginning how-tos. And it's very similar to Psalms 55. See, the book of Psalms, if you're not aware of this, is a book of prayers. It was originally put together in 5 sections. And it was a prayer book. It was intended to be that kickoff conversation guide because you're new at this. And it was intended to help reveal to us what a deep, meaningful relationship with God looks like. And as we look through some of the book of Psalms, you guys are going to see something crazy. The conversations with God are radically different than your idea of asking God for things. There is prayer of David and other people that have written the Psalms, ancient people who wrote all kinds of crazy stuff about this was my cry and my prayer to God. And it was like, did you have a point in there? And it was like, no, I just wanted to talk to him. Then there's prayers in there that are your petitioning prayers that lead and guide and show us. But in Psalms 1, it's the opening idea to this entire prayer book And it begins something like this. It says, I'm just going to turn to it. It says, blessed is the man that walks not in the counsel of the ungodly, nor stands in the way of sinners, nor sits in the seat of the scornful. But his delight is in the law of the Lord, and in his law does he meditate day and night. He is like a tree planted by the streams of water that brings forth his fruit in his season. His leaves also shall not wither, and whatever he does shall prosper. It says, the wicked are not so, but they're like the chaff which the wind drives away. Therefore the wicked will not stand in the judgment, nor the sinners in the congregation of the righteous. For the Lord knows the way of the righteous, but the way of the wicked shall perish. Now that's a mouthful. But what I just simply want to share with you is what this is trying to show us in a very broad sense. He's trying to show us something in this context. There's a lot to be understood in Psalms 1. Psalms 1 is a very packed full chapter, even with just those little 6 to 8 verses. But what he starts off doing is showing us the difference between someone who is in reckless fidelity to Christ, to God, and someone who is seeking experience. He refers to them as wicked and refers to the other as righteous. These words have understandings to it. If you want to just break it down very quickly, righteous means to be in right standing, or the way it ought to be. Reckless fidelity, unwavering. And then what he defines as wicked is described as this idea of they're like the chaff, this stuff around seeds that is useless. He said that's what they're like, and all it takes is, and they're gone. What is that? I'm off to chase my next fling. I'm off to chase the next thing because this is boring. And what are you chasing that next thing for? Hoping that it may give you that sense and feeling again that you once had, and thinking that will sustain, and it will not. But really what you're wanting is that ending scene of intense fidelity. And prayer is the mechanism that God has given us. And what does it say? It says, now meditate. What does that mean? Replay it over and over and over again. Day and night. And that makes you like what? Like a tree. I don't know if you guys know this, but a little tree is still really difficult to move. Y'all ever tried to pull out a weed that's only like that big around, and you're giving it like all your might, and you're like, oh my gosh, this can't be. And then you just end up getting a weed whacker, and you're just like, ah. But you ever seen a tree by a river that's been there for a long time? We don't even have machines that pull it out. Like they just have to chop it up into pieces because it's rooted, it's founded. Trees don't decide to pick themselves up and move off to another place. Trees are rooted and planted. And the example that is given here by the psalmist is saying that is what right standing, that is what the way the relationship with God is supposed to look like. Recklessly abandoning everything else, saying, I refuse to move from this. My life is a container that I pour my fidelity to Christ, to the Spirit of God into, and prayer is my mechanism. Prayer is my conversation. And I will do it day and night, night and day. It will be my sustaining thing. Now I know that many of you are saying, but I still got questions about that other thing. Tune in next week. We're going to continue to dive into this. Today, I hope you walked away with one simple idea. Prayer has been misunderstood and misguided, and we've boiled it down to nothingness. And prayer is meant to be the lifeblood of my spiritual walk, and is meant to be this extremely intimate thing in which I never want to leave, and yet it is the thing that we can't help but avoid. In these next 7 weeks, we are going to learn what it means to bring prayer into a sense of fidelity, to bring prayer into a sense of intimacy. And we're going to use things like the Psalms to help us understand what that looks like. We're going to look at ancient people's prayer rhythms. How did they fill their vessel of their life with fidelity and prayer that drove them to become the people that we read about thousands of years later? How did these people get from that experience of shame and get up, and how did they dredge through the seemingly boring decades and decades and decades to that end result that we all desire? And that's what we're